Helo, a chroeso i ni gyflwyniad heddiw ar-lein yn fyw o gorsaf dawn Aberdâr yn un ar destun tannoedd gwyllt yng Nghymru. Hello and welcome to our live discussion here at Aberdare Fire Station on the hot topic of wildfires in Wales. Rydyn ni yma heddiw i siarad am y gwaith mae'r gwasanaethau cyhoeddus a'i bartneriaid yn ei wneud i arbed dannoedd gwyllt ar ledled Gymru, a beth allwch chi ei wneud i helpu. We're here today to speak about what the emergency services and their partners are doing across Wales to reduce the risk of wildfires and what you can do at home to help. My name is Leyshon, and I work as part of the Healthy Hillsides project that is working with a number of partners across Wales to reduce the severity of wildfires through practical sustainable land management and also to raise awareness of the risk to the Welsh communities and landscape under the climate change predictions of the future. Dwi wedi ymuno heddiw gan nifer o arbenigwydd yn Nghymru sydd yn tannoedd gwyllt, ac byddwn ni heddiw yn mynd trwy beth mae'r Brigad Dan yn ei bartneriaid i'w wneud i ymateb i dannoedd gwyllt, beth yw'r peryglon maen nhw yn ei wynebu pob dydd, a hefyd siarad a beth allwch chi fel cymuned wneud i Gymru i helpu. I'm joined today by a panel of expert guests in wildfire, and we will be discussing the fire services and its partners' work in response to wildfires and what the dangers they pose every day, but also discuss with you what you can do as communities of Wales to help. Rydyn ni hefyd yn rhedeg niferoedd o sgwrsiau wyneb i wyneb yn y Sioe Frenhinol Cymru 2022, trwy y tannoedd gwyllt yng Nghymru 2022. Fe allwch ddarganfod fwy am rhain trwy ein tudalennau cyfraniedig cymdeithasol. We are running a series of face-to-face discussions across the Royal Welsh this week through the Wildfire in Wales 2022 programme, and you can find out more about these sessions through our social media pages. Heddiw, gallwch gofyn cwestiynau yn fyw trwy ysgrifennu yn y bocs testun sydd yn fyw i ni heddiw, ac fyddwn ni ymateb i unrhyw cwestiynau sydd gennych ynglyn â dannoedd gwyllt yng Nghymru. Today we're running a live session here where you can ask questions to our panel live in the subject box. We're here to answer all of your questions about wildfire in Wales. A gad I fi groesi i chi y Brigad Dan De Gymru gyda'n cynrychiolwyr Craig Hope a Chris Deacon, sydd yn gweithio mewn tannoedd gwyllt yn y Deyrnas Unedig ac hefyd yn Ewrop. Bydden nhw yn mynd â chi trwyddo y gwaith maen nhw yn wneud ac hefyd dangos y ffordd maen nhw yn ymateb i dannoedd gwyllt. I have the pleasure to introduce you today to some representatives from the South Wales Fire and Rescue Service, Craig Hope and Chris Deacon, who are leading experts in both the UK and Europe, including around wildfire, and they will be showcasing to you the response units they have, as well as the further work that they will be doing to prevent extreme wildfires in Wales.
Good morning, thank you, Hav. So, just to start the conversation really, this is traditional firefighting equipment. This is the PPE we wear when we go into burning buildings. This is what you will see firefighters wearing all through the year at incidents. And fortunately within South Wales Fire Service, because obviously this is designed to keep you safe within burning buildings. Fortunately within South Wales Fire Service we have a lightweight kit. This is a multi-purpose PPE. It's flame retardant, but it's also very light, very comfortable to wear. And we can wear this on hot days, and that means we don't have to resort to wearing t-shirts to fight fires, because you imagine wearing this very hot bunker-style jacket on a hot day, there's a risk of overheating, heat stroke, etc. So, but we can maintain our PPE levels and also be safe and still fight fires. This is a traditional fire beater, which you may be used to seeing. And this is how we fought fires for many, many years. This was the only specialist piece of equipment carried within the fire service across the UK for fighting wildfires. It's just a beater. There's different types, different style of handles, different style of head. But basically, the action is, and you just beat the fire and you keep beating until the flames are extinguished. We have started a wildfire project many years ago, and we have moved on with the equipment and the knowledge we have, training. Every firefighter within South Wales is trained at different levels of wildfire, but everybody receives training, so everybody is always safe on the fire ground, which is really important. Moving over to our ATV, this is a true 6x6 wheel off-road all-terrain vehicle. We have 4 of these within South Wales, always ready to respond to not just wildfires, but any off-road emergency where we need to get firefighters. It carries a crew of 3, all within a roll cage, all with seat belts, with helmets. And this is a really great tool, especially in the conditions we are facing, large rural areas where we cannot get standard fire engines. We move round then to the equipment. We can also fit a winch on the front or the back for self-recovery. That's carried on the vehicle. We have a water tank, 200 litres of water, which feeds a high-pressure fogging system. with 60 metres of hose and a high pressure fogging gun. Very similar to what you see people, your pressure washers, but much higher pressures. Very good at extinguishing fires and very lightweight to carry, drag along the mountain, unlike traditional firefighting hose. Here we have a firefighting rake. So as well as the beaters, we can now use this to remove fuel in front of the fire. So beaters are direct attack. Beaters, you have to be by the flames, you have to be in the heat, beating the flames. With these tools, we can come away from the flames and we can create a control line. So we're not working in the heat and the smoke. This is a drip torch. So we carry across the service on our 4 wildfire stations. The firefighters are trained to use this equipment. Now this is used for lighting fires. Now, as well as we manage the landscape, so as well as attending fires, wildfires, out of control fires, we also use fire as a tool to manage the landscape. We've had 76,000 wildfires in South Wales in the last 20 years, over 76,000. It's a huge number of fires. We're working really hard to reduce the numbers of these fires. But the issue with that is, every time you don't get a fire, the vegetation is still there. The smaller the fires are, the more vegetation is there. So now we proactively go out and we create buffers using fire ourselves. Not all fire is bad. This is a really important message. Some fire is good. And when we are lighting fires in the early spring, before the bird nesting season, when the ground is still wet, we're just removing the surface fuels. And that is keeping people safe. And it's really important. Not all fires are bad. Obviously, on a day like today, we're outside the prescribed burning season. We wouldn't be prescribed burning. But also, it's very dangerous to light fires on a day like today, where the fires will just run. But our crews are trained to use these, as well as then on very large fires, we can use what's called tactical fire. So we can move in front. Techniques we've learned from across the world, working really hard to not always adopt, but adapting other people's techniques to what fits us in Wales. And we can now use fire to fight fire, which is another really important tool in our toolbox. All of this is part of our toolbox. I've mentioned the rake. Now we have the leaf blower. Now this is a standard leaf blower, like you would see a land manager using. We use this to blow out the flames. It sounds strange when you explain it to people, but if you imagine you blow out your candles, it's exactly the same technique. You get below the flames and you just blow out the flames. Very good on early season fires, on our prescribed controlled burns when we are managing fires. When the fires get more deep-seated later in the year, it's not as effective because there's no cooling mechanism with this, it's just air. So again, really important, but a tool in a toolbox. And this is what, everything you can see here, it's all tools in a toolbox, and it's about developing. We've spent a long time developing this. This has been 15 years of work, and I've spent 5 years researching as part of a master's degree, risks of wildfire in Wales and people's perceptions, stakeholders' perceptions and public perceptions. And people are concerned about wildfires, and we've spent 15 years, I've developed this toolbox of tools, 15 years of developing it, and it's been small steps. And as you can see with the weather, we've just had the hottest day ever. It's now, we need to increase our stride length now. We've done the small steps, and now we've got to keep moving. It's not a time to stall, it's time to move on now with bigger plans, Welsh Government involvement, services in Wales, again on board NRW, on board local authorities, South Wales Police. This is about learning to live with fire now, because this is a complex problem, one that we're not going to solve by just repeatedly asking people not to light fires. There's a bigger issue out there about land management and the way we manage our land and all of these other complex issues. I'll hand you over to Chris, who's going to talk about the eye cutter.
Thanks, Craig. So this is our eye cutter 4.5. We've had this in development now for around 3 years in different formats. As you can see, we've currently got a bruising head on, which we use to suppress bracken. We've also got a cutting head, which we use to open up pathways and make fire breaks on the mountain. And we've identified a lot of areas throughout South Wales that are at risk with overgrown vegetation, areas that are not being managed. We've also had a lot of build-up in fires in these areas. When we identify these areas, we go in with the eye cutter, the team of people, and we work then to create fire breaks on the mountainside. What these fire breaks enable us to do is, rather than lose an entire mountainside when we have a fire, we're only losing a section. So we're working with partners in the Healthy Hillsides project, where NRW, Wales Wildlife Trust, Ramblers Cymru, and we're working with them heavily to look at concepts in these areas where we're able to manage the fuel. Now, we've currently got around 20 to 30 sites throughout South Wales that we're working on, and we're building that up year by year. We've currently got 6 sites we're working on with the Healthy Hillsides, where we're proving concepts with grazing, fencing, geofencing, and just being able to get the community back on the mountain. So part of my role is go out, I cut the mountain up, break up, open up pathways with ramblers that have been lost for years, and then we get the people back on the mountainside to maintain those fire breaks for us. And like I say, at the moment, we're just trying to prove concept in those areas to try and see if these things work to be able to suppress bracken and other fuels on the mountain. We're also in the process of mapping all those areas to give our tactical managers more ability to have a more robust plan when they turn up to tackle these wildfires. So all that information is going to be put onto our data terminals to give them the ability to make that plan and hopefully be able to suppress these fires. I don't know if Craig wants to do more on the Land Rover.
So this is the trailer which delivers the ATV to the incident. On the trailer, we carry brush cutters, which we can again use, get in front of the fire, create fire breaks, as well as the cutter. The cutter is great for large open spaces, but tighter, narrower spaces, we use brush cutters, and the firefighters are trained to use them. On this, this is forestry, we call it forestry hose. It's 25 mil. It's much smaller, much lighter to use than standard firefighting hose. We have 400 metres, 250 metres in the boxes. We can flail off immediately, very quick to get to work. Just a small group of firefighters can run a really long hose line out. And then we can do what's called a progressive hose lay. So again, this is learning techniques from across the world, how other firefighters, how American firefighters work, how Spanish firefighters, Portuguese firefighters, and working and adopting and adapting. It's really important. This is 75 metres of hose in this rucksack. So a firefighter, we can drag the hose up the mountain, and then when we get to the end, we can then extend with these rucksacks. So rather than traditional dragging all of the hose up the mountain, we can now walk up with it in a rucksack and advance and advance and advance. We have a mile of this hose across the service, so we can get a long way and put out a lot of fire with a mile of hose. This is a Land Rover which tows the ATV, as I mentioned. It's also got a water tank, fogging unit. It carries 450 litres of water, high pressure firefighting system. Versatile. Road, not as good as the ATV, because the ATV is smaller and much lighter, but still a really good vehicle to be used across the South Wales area and further afield. As well as fires in Wales, members of South Wales Fire Service are part of the UK Tactical Advisor team. So there's a team of firefighters, tactical officers across the UK who respond anywhere in the UK to wildfires to help other services, because not every service has this risk, and this is all about cost and money. We've been fortunate, we've had the money, but we have the risk. This risk isn't everywhere, but this risk is growing. So at the moment, we have a cadre of officers who can attend, and we have attended incidents across the UK with this equipment to help other services. We were part of the team that went to Greece last year. We fought fires in Greece. So we're learning all the time, our skills, we're increasing our skills and our experiences, and it's really important then we can bring that back to protect the people of Wales, the communities of Wales. So that's the Land Rover. I think that's everything. I think we're going to hand back to Harv. Thank you.
Right, thank you very much. That was brilliant. We are now joined by our other guest panels that are here today. So we have John Abel from the South Wales Police. Mae gen i John Abel o'r Heddlu De Cymru. A mae fe yn mynd i siarad tymor bach amdan beth mae'r gwaith maen nhw yn neud ar draws Cymru. So John is going to have a chat to you today about some of the work that they are doing as part of their police service for wildfire risk.
Good morning, Av. Thanks for being invited here today. I work currently in the Community Safety Partnership in Merthyr Tydfil, where I work as an antisocial behaviour coordinator. Although I look at antisocial behaviour on a whole, we cover the central area. So it's from Porthcawl, Bridgend, up to the Cynon Valley, the Taff Valley and the Rhondda Valleys. So it's quite a large area. There's only 2 of us. It's myself and my colleague PC Reynolds that cover that area. But also part of my role is to work with my colleagues under the Dawn's Glow with the fire service for South Wales Police involving the grass fires and refuse fires in our areas. We've got our own operation ourselves underneath the Dawn's Glow in South Wales Police called Operation Grouse. which, like I said, covers the grass fires and the refuse fires within those specific areas, which I've just said. Basically, it runs from February until around the August period, where I collate information, figures, locations, any damage caused, and hopefully suspects at some point within those areas, and pass it on to the relevant inspectors and officers who are the single points of contact in those areas. We also utilise antisocial behaviour route as well by putting referrals in for them. Then we also use the fire intervention scheme as well, where referrals bounce to the fire service for them to try and educate them. But going on the back of what my colleagues in the fire service have said, the issue with grass fires in our area is totally ingrained in society. It's been happening for years, and I think that although we can start educating the youths, I think we need to educate the adults as well. You just can't blame the youths for this. And the problem is not just the fire service, it's the Forestry Commission, the NRW, it's with the police as well. With ourselves, we got a new drone team which we can utilise when we carry out operations. We use the horses, and we've got a newly formed off-road team with the use of quads, and I think we're taking delivery of electric bikes in the future as well, which would be a big benefit to us. So on the whole, we got to respond to what's happening, and to try and police this geographical area is nigh on impossible for us, unfortunately. We're very few on the ground, but we try and link in with yourselves and NRW and the fire service and do joint patrols and do what we can. But I think the way forward is definitely educating, like my colleague said in the first place.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, John. That's fantastic. We are welcoming any questions through, so please put them through in your chat box if you have any questions for the fire service or the police so far. But before we do that, I'd like to hand over to Becky Davies from Natural Resources Waste. I hand draso I Becky Davies, sydd yn dod o Cyfoeth Naturiol Cymru ac yn gweithio o ran y danaeth gwyllt yn Ne Cymru, ac she's going to give you a little outline about what work we do in South Wales.
Thank you, Harv. So I work for Natural Resources Wales, as you said, and my role in all this is how we can work together to sort of tackle some of the key challenges within our place. So we have a beautiful environment here in the South Wales valleys, but as described already today, we have a lot of challenges. So there's been a real progression over the last few years of how we've sort of really understood this this challenge. So it started about 2015 with the bringing on of the new Environment Wales Act and also the Wellbeing and Future Generations Act. So, and that sort of really tasked us to sort of look in a more integrated way, how we can better work collaboratively, to work within our communities and have a really good understanding about what the challenges are within place and what are the opportunities as well. So wildfire came in as a really key issue from the conservation sort of groups. It came in from the police, it came in from the fire service and local authorities as well, and having to tackle these issues of antisocial behaviours. It was a key issue for Natural Resources Wales as well, because we do manage the Welsh Government woodland estate, which is significant in this area. It really sort of takes on a lot, and that is therefore timber production, but it's also there for amenity and the value, and it's sort of, this is the landscape of the valleys. So we knew manage these issues. If the fire service are going out and cutting and sort of tackling the fire, we have not sort of, we've not prepared the land, we have not managed the risk. So we are needing to sort of change things. Craig mentioned all the sort of toolbox of kit that he sort of, was looking at to sort of adapt to this issue. We as land managers need to do the same. If we manage the landscape differently, we can reduce that risk. We can at the same time enhance it for biodiversity. We are tackling that nature crisis, but we're also making the site more resilient for climate change as well.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Becky. That was really very good summary. Thank you so much. So we do have some questions on the chat. So I'd like to welcome back the fire service into that. And we're just going to share a mic between us all. Brilliant. So we do have a question from the audience. How is it important to partner with firefighters in Europe, considering our British summers are getting hotter and longer?
It's really important. Partnership working. It's just so important to learn off other people. I'm very fortunate I've been part of a number of projects. I'm part of the Avon project, which is about fire analysis. So there's an advanced fire analysis group, and South Wales were part of this European project. So it's really important. And now what we're learning is how to analyse where these fires are going to go, these big severe fires, and then we can work together. And we're now going to pass that across the UK. Through the UK Technical Advisor cadre, we're now going to train the UK on how to deal with these large fires. So it is really important, and just collaborative working. Everything is about, but it's got to be true partnerships. It's partnerships for life, not just for Christmas. They're really important, and you build relationships, and it's the relationships as well as the partnerships that are so important. I know people now all over the world that I can speak to and get advice from, or look, and people take ideas from us, because we're all working together, and it's the same problem. Fire is the same wherever. The flames may be bigger, but they're just as hot, and that's why we need to build these partnerships and all work together.
Fantastic, thank you. Do you want anyone else would like to come in?
I can sort of, we have learned from the work that Craig and Chris have been doing across Europe, and those contacts going to the wildfire conference and things like that. But as Craig says, partnership and an equitable partnership is really, really important. I've learned so much about fire, and I think you've learned an awful lot about conservation as well, and how we can sort of, have a balance between managing the hillsides. Proactive, preventative is really important. We need to do that in order to maintain our biodiversity as well. So, working in partnership, they get to do that sort of thing, and it's brilliant. It's really good.
Brilliant. So we have another question from the audience. How can education support the work Healthy Hillsides is doing to tackle the key challenges around wildfires? I'd like to open that out to the panel.
Education is really, really important. As I emphasise, not all fire is bad, and that's something I'm very passionate about. We can't remove fire from our landscape. If we had a magic wand and we could stop fires now, when we don't have fire for 10 years, one accidental fire will kill people. The amount of fuel build up. So again, cutting, grazing, burning, but all of these are tools, and that's about educating the public. I've just spent, as I said, 5 years doing a master's degree all about public perceptions. There are a lot of gaps out there within the fire and rescue services, within government, within all organisations. People have the total wrong idea. People think we have a summer wildfire problem. We don't. We generally have a springtime fire problem. And all these things, it's about education. It's about getting everybody to the same level of understanding, because we'll never be able to work together if we don't all understand what the problem is. And this is a really complex problem. It's not simple at all.
So, from a Healthy Hillsides perspective, we always realised that education was a really key part of it. Now, we are talking about quite traditional education, working with our educational professionals within Natural Resources Wales, but also a community of educational practitioners across South Wales as well. So that is the in-school element of it, and putting in programmes for throughout the year. But what is really key is education through, we never stop learning, really, so we have educated ourselves as partners, where it's about educating land managers and sort of putting that then into policy, and, always learning about things, whether that be from Europe, from, sort of contacts locally, and sharing that, that's vitally important.
Absolutely.
And back to what my colleagues just said, it's the age range as well. It's not just the youths, it's the adults as well. And I know that my colleagues in the school liaison sort of side of things, the South Wales Police, they do give lessons on it. But hopefully we can link in with you guys as well with that, so we can go in as a team. Like you said, the problem isn't just you, it's ours.
Yeah. It's everybody's. It's ours issue as well as government, but it's the communities as well. Wildfire is everybody's problem. And unfortunately, until we start losing properties, we've had 76,000 wildfires in 20 years. We haven't lost a house. We haven't had a serious injury. And, well, fortunately, but that is fortunately, and our luck will run out. And you only got to look at these weathers.
The risk is increasing.
Yeah, the risk is increasing. The risk isn't dropping, the risk is getting more. We've been lucky, and your luck will run out, and that's why we all start working together now.
Brilliant.
Really important.
It's not just education in schools and communities as well, it's also education with farmers and NRW. So we're working heavily with NRW in the forestries to look at how their fire breaks can change. We have big problems. We could have, effectively, we've got continuous fuel across the forestry. So we're working with NRW to educate them on how we fight fire and how these fire breaks can be implemented to best suit us. That's a project we're working on now. Same with the farmers. We're looking at, we have a big problem with farmers losing fences, then fires that are set on farmland moving into NRW forestry or into communities. So we're working with the farmers to educate them on how they can manage their land, or how they can burn effectively under our guidance. So that's a big part of our education as well, we're doing with land management.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Okay, so we've got another question in. What challenges do you face operating in a post-industrial landscape?
South Wales valleys are a post-industrial landscape. We've got the coal mines, we've got the historical industrial landscape. The Brecon beacons and the pollution from the Industrial Revolution on the Brecon beacons. We've had a 1,600 hectare fire on the Brecon beacons this year. The total area burnt on the Brecon beacons so far this year is 5,500 hectares. That's the water catchment for South Wales. There's 1.5 million people's water catchment, and that peat, that's a peat landscape, that peat is contaminated due to the Industrial Revolution. And the issue with that, these large fires we've had, 5,500 hectares, they haven't burned into the peat because they were winter, early springtime fires. As I mentioned, when the ground is wet, the vegetation is dry. The risk is, as it happened at Saddleworth Moor, as it happened at Winter Hill in England, the peat will catch fire. And when that peat catches fire, our peat is contaminated, and then our water run off. So yeah, it's very complex problems, and we have to manage these complex problems. We're aware of the coal tips in the South Wales valleys. We've had fires on coal tips. We've had coal tips that have slipped. There's no direct link yet to whether removing the vegetation could cause the land to slide. But removing the vegetation, which is pinning that coal tip in place, is obviously a risk and something we need to avoid. So all of these things, it's research, it's working with the research, working with the academics, working with everybody. It's really, really important now because there's a window of opportunity, and that window of opportunity is closing. And it's really important that we all work together.
The post-industrial landscape as well, how it used to be managed was small holdings, lots of sort of cows, lots of ponies, lots of sheep, keeping that vegetation down. And once that industry is gone, we don't have that landscape anymore. We do have all those open areas, but they're just growing vegetation every single season and creating that increased fuel load. So, if it was managed like it used to be, then we would have, a suppressed fuel load, which would be fantastic for biodiversity. We want that sort of mosaic of habitats. So, that is another really key one. And it's really important about knowing and understanding that heritage and where we've come from. So that's a really key part of the industrial sort of landscape.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Okay, another question in. Do you see a need for helicopter support increasing in the future?
We are very fortunate in Wales. The 3 fire services in Wales have a helicopter on standby for 6 months of the year. That is unique in the UK. So the helicopter, South Wales train the other services how to use the helicopter. We're innovative all the time, always looking at different ways. The helicopter company have just purchased a snorkel, which means we can now pick water out of firefighting dams. So yeah, and the helicopter we hope to have here today, actually, we were going to land it outside and do a show and tell on it. Unfortunately, it's been on standby because of the weather forecast that we saw. We called a helicopter in on Friday afternoon. The helicopter's been on standby. It's been to a number of fires this weekend. It's currently in mid-Wales firefighting. But yeah, we are very lucky. We work closely with NRW, close with the helicopter providers. But yeah, in 2018, we used 2 helicopters across Wales almost continuously through the summer. We've had the helicopter for 20 odd years available. People don't see it because we don't use it all the time. It's always available through the spring-summer season. But again, it's really important. It's another tool in a toolbox. But again, people need to realise when a helicopter's dropping water, it damps the flames down. It doesn't put the fire out. We still need firefighters, boots on the ground, going up there and working with hand tools, beating, or the ATVs, actually extinguishing and making sure that fire is out. But again, it's a tool in a toolbox and really important. And we're really grateful of this partnership we have with NRW and the 3 services in Wales. So it's really good.
Thank you, Craig. I do realise that we are freezing on some occasions. Just for you to be aware, we are recording the session today, so all of this will be available to you to download after the session. It will be shared by the South Wales Fire and Rescue Services and all the fire services across Wales for you to catch up on any of the questions that you are missing. Okay, so Question around wildfire arson. It's disproportionately higher than the number of wildfire arson prosecutions. How can we work with communities to curb the habitual behaviour of setting hillsides alight to minimise the number of ignitions?
I dare say it's down to education again, but we need people like witnesses to come forward. There's a lack of reporting as well, unfortunately, because some people, oh, mountain's on fire again, and that's it. Do you know what I mean? Sometimes, we believe it or not, we're not aware of it. But it's information we need, and people to provide details, because somebody must know who's doing it. You know, it's guaranteed. We live in small communities around here, in small valleys, and everybody tends to know what everybody else is doing. So that's what we need, is for people to come forward, and that will greatly assist us in able to prosecute them. But then prosecutions is right at the end. Like, we just want to engage and explain to people and sort of educate them more than anything. However, you know, we will prosecute if we have to, specifically if there's damage involved with the costs, any livestock, and unfortunately, my colleagues have said it is ticking down where somebody is going to get hurt, whether it be the person who is setting the area alight, or an unfortunate bystander, or somebody has household on the property. But that will come, I think, unfortunately. I'm sorry to say.
Is there a way in which the community can inform you of any issues like that?
They can.
As well?
They can either phone in on 101. If it's an emergency, it's 999, obviously, as always. But they can take to reporting as well to us online now. They can report to the SWP online. I know they're watching Facebook as well, and SWP. You can see things on that as well. Even if they don't want to speak to us, which is understandable, because we take details, they don't want to get involved as such. Even if they call into the fire station, I dare say, they say, you know, the fire crews will be happy to take the information and pass it on to us. That's not a problem.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Okay, so in terms of the people who actively use the mountains of South Wales for leisure activities, which groups do you work with to assist in managing the landscape?
So we're currently working with Ramblers Cymru and Welcome to Our Woods. Welcome to Woods are based in Treherbert area, cover the top end of Rhondda. Ramblers Cymru are based all over South Wales, so they're a project we're currently working with. It's been really good with us because they're identifying a lot of pathways, footpaths that have been lost. So we're working with the cutter, going up, reopening these pathways. Like I say, we don't just do that. We work with the Ecologist from NRW and the Wildlife Trust. They come in, we do nested bird surveys. We work with mapping then to see exactly where the path is. And then if we can assist, we use our cutter to reopen those pathways. Now, we've seen this as a fantastic opportunity for us because once those pathways are reopened then, and we're working with the Ramblers group, they put people on the mountain. So we've got a lot of people then walking those paths and doing our job for us where they're keeping those fire breaks open. So it's something that I can cut initially and then probably not have to go back to for a long time. So that's projects we need really across the mountains where we don't have the ability to cover all of South Wales and fire break everywhere, but we have the ability to work with these groups. So right, if we cut an initial fire break, then you can keep it open, whether it be with mountain biking, walking, and I know it's a subject that we don't like to go on, but spikes. You know, and I think our local councils and things really need to look at motocross. There's a lot of people doing illegal motocross everywhere. Perhaps we should think about giving these people somewhere to go or pathways to work on where they can do it legally. So, you know, they're a big part of our community.
Brilliant.
I was just going to say, we've worked with a couple of really good communities as well. So Clydach Vale, there's a country park there, and we've sectioned off a large area there that we want to graze in long term. And Tara, who works with the Wildlife Trust, and she sort of works on this project, she's been working really closely with the community there. We're also working with the local authorities as well. So, you know, there are lots of people out there who can sort of help. And you know, the sort of things that Chris was saying, it's like if you get more people out onto the hillside, it's fantastic for your physical and mental health. All these hillsides are open for access, you know, and it's just a shame that they aren't used positively all the time. So if we can open up hillsides as fire breaks, but also as paths, then, you know, we get more people on the mountainside that can report these incidents, but they are getting out and enjoying the value of these places as well.
Fantastic, thank you. Okay, so that's the end of the questions at the moment. So we'll just keep that live for now if anyone wants to ask any more questions. But I'll open it out to the floor. I wonder if perhaps Chris, you'd like to mention a little bit about the Firewise Initiative and what people can do to get involved with the land management work that you're doing.
So we've currently got a project working alongside the Healthy Hillsides, which is Firewise. We're looking to get communities basically aware of the risk in their areas, the wildfire risk specifically. So we've got areas working, I know one of our sites is the Billy Wint site, Llantrisant. So we're working with Llantrisant Council and the local groups there. We're looking to get grazing animals, I believe, Becky, on that one, aren't we? But it's bringing the community into it heavily. So it's for people to be aware of vegetation on their property, risks in their area, whether it's a risk that's big enough for us to deal with, they could report that to their local fire station if they have a worry there. Or it's just looking at your property. Is your property safe from wildfire? What can you do to make your property, whether it's felling trees around your property, you know, if you're backing onto a mountainside which is heavily built with bracken, look at that. But it's other things, it's looking at barbecuing correctly, control burning correctly, these things in your area. You know, we're doing a lot, like I say, we've got a lot of initiatives. We're working with the Gurnos with the Firewise project as well, which we've opened up pathways there for people to walk on, like Becky said, trying to get people back onto the mountainside for their health and well-being, and for people to take part ownership of these areas. And I don't mean direct ownership of them, but for it to belong to them to get back on usage of these areas. And we've got a lot of mountainside that's been lost for a long time, that we need to be getting back, the communities back on the mountain and get the communities back working with these areas. So I know we're looking at management-wise with the Healthy Hillsides. We've got an awful lot going on. Like, I've only recently come out of this project, probably about 4 or 5 months ago. But we're working with a lot of groups across South Wales, ranging from the Blorange, those areas, where we're working with paragliding groups, walkers, landowners and councils in those areas. They've got fire management plans in place. What we'd like to do really would be put fire management plans in place for all these at-risk areas across South Wales, which is what I'm currently working on internally. But we're willing now to come out and work with farmers, with landowners, to identify risk to them and see if they're able to manage that risk. Like I say, we're unable to manage all of the risks. We can help in areas, but we want people to start to take ownership and to manage their risk. That's a big part of it for us, you know, especially with farmers, landowners, NRW with their forestries, to start to take serious ownership over these areas and manage their own risk.
Thanks, Chris, that's brilliant. We've got another question. Given the changing climate in the UK, when will we see the fires similar to those experienced in Greece last year and currently devastating parts of France, Spain and Portugal?
Again, climate change, we're in a very dry, hot heat wave at the moment. They do get huge fires on the continent. The fire that we fought in Greece was very similar to the fire we fought in Cwmcarn in 2018. Very dry, but the same forestry plantations, the same landscape, the same issues. And so we're already seeing severe fires in Wales. But again, potentially it can come. That's the prediction from the experts, is the weather will change. And one thing we do have in Wales, we have a fantastic growing season as well. You only got to go onto the hills and see the bracken this year that is 2 meters high. It's incredible. And all that bracken will die over winter now and be available to burn. So again, it potentially...
We've just been lucky at the moment.
I really think we have the ignitions. We have, I think, what you don't see on the continent, or what I haven't seen, is people going out arson fires. Like, they get arsonists, but nothing like we have. You're 8 times more likely to get an arson fire in South Wales than anywhere else in the UK. And this is, we don't know, police officer, what is it? I don't know. But, so, we've got the arson problem. If you look around you, we've definitely got the vegetation problem. What we haven't got is the weather. So really, it's only the weather currently keeping us safe. And if this weather does become the norm, then yeah, we will start seeing severe fires. And these fires will change. And the risk for the UK, or the risk for the South Wales valleys of summertime fires, is we don't get the green up. So then we've got all these steep valley slopes, and you can look around. This is documented in areas across the world where they've got these steep valley sides. The fires happen in the summer, as are happening in America now. And then you follow the news after large wildfires in California. 3 months later, there'll be large landslides in California and large flooding. And that's potentially what will come to us. People thought we were imagining this, and we've just had the hottest day ever recorded. And not only by, I don't think it was 0.1 degrees, I think it was 3 degrees. That's incredible. And we really need to start planning. We need to start working together. This is everybody's problem. And we can lead on parts of it, but we can't lead on it all, even as a group, even with Healthy Hillsides. And what Chris said about the Firewise is really important. Firewise is all about people taking responsibility for their own actions. When there's a lot of abandoned land in South Wales, we're aware of that. A lot of fires in what we call the urban interface, where the mountain comes into people's back gardens and these trees are growing because there's no grazing sheep, fly graze in these areas anymore. The willow trees, the birch trees, they're all taking over and that's growing into people's gardens and people are cutting the branches, which is fair enough, but they're throwing them straight over the hedge. Have a look, walk around your property today. Have a look outside, walk the perimeter of your land. Look, these trees that maybe you've cut down thinking because they're blocking the sun, they're blocking your television, because we get a lot of that as well. We get requests, can you do something, but this is blocking out TV, can you cut a break? And have a look over your fence and see what's there. And these dry trees, which you may have cut, they're now cured, it's dried, cured, dead, ready to burn. And then you're having a barbecue and the sparks from your barbecue, or next door's having a controlled burn. Again, controlled burning. And you're allowed to burn whatever grows in your garden in the UK, you're allowed to burn it in your garden. That's fair enough. But again, this time of year, really, have a really good think about it. Compost your waste, take it to the tip. Please do not control burn today in this weather conditions. And again, it's really important. People are not used to this. I think people are not used to this. And I think we could be really unfortunate and have quite a horrific accident by somebody thinking, oh, well, I've cut the trees, I'll burn them, they're dry now, I'll burn them. Today is not the day, and this weather pattern isn't the day, and it's really important. That's what Firewise fundamentally is all about, is the community, because we can't be everywhere. We can't be everywhere all of the time, and people are being lucky a lot. It's really important that we all work together, and that's what Firewise is about.
I was also going to say that, like I say, you need to understand what the vegetation is like behind your property, and it's about managing it in the best way. So if you've got Japanese knotweed, you shouldn't be cutting it down and burning it or something like that. You need to get advice, and there is advice freely available on the NRW website. But, and it's sort of cutting vegetation down at the right time of year so that you're not creating problems for yourself, and you're not local biodiversity, because people want to sit out in their gardens and enjoy the birds. So it's about being knowledgeable about that. And I think the thing is as well is that climate change is there. If we are relying on the fire service to get out, they have adapted with all this stuff to know how to fight these fires differently. This is a problem that we should be dealing with throughout the year. We should be managing the landscape so that we are reducing it, so that when a fire does inevitably go up, it is easier, it is safer for communities, and it's safer for the fire service to sort of go out and then. So it is a 365-day, a year issue, and it is for everybody to deal with as well.
Brilliant. Well, we're out of questions again, so I will open it out to the panel. I was going to ask around the Sustainable Farming Scheme, which is the new farming payment scheme, which is being launched in Wales today. Now, Becky, what is your thoughts on that in terms of wildfire of the future, what land managers can play their part in that?
So it's about, sort of managing the land for multiple benefits, Where we have key challenges within a place, it is about sort of ensuring that in changes to the farm that they are building in fire as a risk, and so that they can manage that land appropriately. If you're working sustainably, that's going to put you in a better position for future wards as well. So, it's about thinking about what your land is, where it is, how it's used, and, what the risks are. So I think, the Sustainable Farming Scheme should consider wildfire within it, and how, that urban interface, and where farms in particular join communities, but breaking up the sort of landscape. I think that's going to be a really, really important thing as climate change adaptation to sort of think about in the long term. And, and I really urge, that is really considered, along with our other challenges around climate change, like flood risk and things like that. But, it needs to be considered, I think.
Absolutely. Thank you, Becky. Okay, so we haven't had any other questions yet, so I'll open it out to the floor. So Chris, I was just wondering, if land managers wanted to get involved and have any information around doing burn plans, is there anything the fire services across Wales can support with?
Yeah, like I say, we work with a lot of working groups, Brecon Beacons being one, but we're encouraging people to come to us if they need advice. Yeah, so I can come out and visit them, or part of the team can come out to visit them, whether it be myself, Craig, to give these people advice. So we can look at them and how we would fight fire on their land, what we think is a risk on their land, and then advising them. Now, we can't do everyone's fire management plans for them, but we can give them advice. So if anyone needs advice, they're more welcome to contact us through South Wales 232,000. Ask myself, or give my email our way and email me, and I have the ability then to look at the area, come and visit them and see if there is a risk there. If there is a significant risk there, then we can work with those people, or we can bring in other partners, Wildlife Foundation, NRW, to work with them as well, if they are seriously worried about fire on their property. And like I said, we're talking farmers, private foresters, whatever it will be. If they want to work with us, that'd be great. And we can adapt our internal plans then, how we would fight the fire on their land off the basis of their fire management plans, which would be fantastic.
I think I was going to say that's the education thing. So somebody from a different background that has concerns or has worries or has done something on their land that has worked well, we want to hear about it. We want to sort of understand and educate ourselves. And, so I really do urge people to engage in this challenge, because let's act now. Let's kind of fail and learn from what we're doing now, whilst we have a little bit of breathing space. I mean, like, the temperatures ain't giving that today, but, our colleagues, the partners across Europe have said, we were where you were 20 years ago, and now they're fighting, fires for weeks and weeks on end and losing people. Is it something like 14,000 people were moved in France because of that fire? And I don't think that the landscape is particularly different to what it is here. So, we may see mass evacuations in the future. So let's learn and act now, I think, is just really key.
I think, just to reiterate what Chris said, the land managers, helping the land managers, the Welsh Government's legislation on prescribed burning says contact your local fire service. We have got infinite resources, and maybe now, with this issue we are facing, maybe now it is time that we move into having more people in these roles, or more training for people, and dedicated fuel management teams. There is so much fuel on the mountainsides, and the risk is there, and we will start to lose properties. It's inevitable. And I think now is the time, and it's really important that we start to look for the future. Wales is really good at being at the forefront of sort of innovation and things like that as a country, legislation, and maybe something else, legislation, because there is so much land around which is now abandoned, and maybe that's something we need to look at. And that don't sit well with a lot of people, but should we be having fires burning off the mountainsides into people's back gardens that is totally unmanaged land? Or whose responsibility is it to manage that land? And maybe there is a need there for management teams and employability schemes. That's another thing I've seen throughout the world, where South Africa, they have fantastic employability schemes where they train people, they take people with no education, no training, and they train them up to be fuel managers, land managers, and they give them the qualifications, and they leave that program after 2 years and can then go and get employment. So these schemes are there. We just got to look at them and adapt them to our needs. But it's really important. That's where the Welsh Government need to come on board with a lot of this as well, because it's their problem as much as it's ours. And people always think fire, well, I call a fire service. A lot of these fires are lost before they're even lit. And that is the problem. And that's what you're seeing in France, Spain, Portugal right now, all across the Mediterranean, or even up into Northern Europe now. Even Germany today is on high risk for wildfire. And some of these, it's unprecedented. And unfortunately for them, they haven't been on a journey we've been on. They haven't got the ATVs, they haven't got the lightweight fire kit. And we're going to hurt people. And like I said, we know it now, and we need to act. And that's really important for us all. And we need to move forward, because bigger steps, not smaller steps.
Fantastic. Okay, we've got a question from the audience. What benefits do wildfires have?
Benefits of wildfires. Well, an early season wildfire is quite similar to a prescribed burn, which is a controlled burn. So again, we go out and we manage the fuel. So you could say some of these wildfires, are reducing the fuel load for later on. That's why now you'll see us at certain incidents, if someone lights a fire, not today, if someone lights a fire in the spring and it's burning, we may attend and we'll look at it and we'll identify what the fire's doing, what the relationship is with the fire, with the ground, and we may allow it to burn. And that we'll class that as a managed burn. We are sort of wildfire under management, and we'll watch it and we'll let it burn to an area and manage that area, because what's better for that's burnt. It can't burn again that year, and it probably won't burn the next year. But what it won't burn is in June or July, when we have weather like this, where it's going to make runs and it's going to... There's a lot of talk about carbon release from wildfires. Wildfires do release a lot of carbon into the atmosphere, especially when we start burning peat. And that's why, again, looking at the carbon, and this is where research is really important, the carbon release from a prescribed burn on a cold, damp day is nothing compared to the carbon release from a huge wildfire. And that, again, we need to understand this. We need to research it so we can evidence-base it. Because I could be wrong. So let's educate ourselves, let's research. But I fundamentally believe, and the research I've done, is that, and that's what they're doing in areas, the Northern Territories in Australia, they're actually carbon credits through burning a landscape in the wet season, so that they don't get catastrophic wildfires burning into the ground and releasing all that carbon in the fire season. So we can learn these things. And we don't want people going on a mountainside lighting wildfires. We don't want that. But we also understand there is a fuel management problem. I've spent, as I said, 15 years, and it started off with, right, what are we going to do to solve the problem? We're going to train all the firefighters. We're going to have the best gear we can get, and we're going to train everybody. And then it was a partner sort of project. We're going to stop people lighting fires. We haven't stopped people lighting fires. We have reduced the numbers, but that, if you look at that, that could be the weather patterns as well. But we haven't stopped people lighting fires. We have become a lot better. Are we there yet? No, we're not. We still need to pass this knowledge on, and we need to get better. And again, it's complex problems, but we are getting there slowly, and that's what's important. And then this went, so it's about training firefighters, it's about the education, we know that, it's all of this, stopping people lighting fires, and then it comes around to the fuel. And that's the main problem. Because if we tarmacked South Wales, we wouldn't have a wildfire problem. Becky wouldn't be very happy. But, and it's a vegetation problem. Yes, we have people who light fires, but we've had 96% of our fires are arson. But let's not forget 4% of them are accidental. And there's still 4%, and then 4% can still become very big fires. And that's where the issues are. And so it's really important we look at a toolbox of tools, we have ideas and year-round solutions to seasonal problems. That's what it is, because 15 years ago, we would, fire stations like Aberdeen, which we know, we call it the grass season, we know it's coming, we would make sure we had bottles of water and we had 5 beaters on a fire edge, and that was it. And now, there's not a sort of a period goes by where we're not talking about wildfire, doing something, training with the equipment. And that's what we have done, and it's really important. But it's really important we involve everybody.
And I think, tools for managing the landscape for conservation as well. We talk about cutting, and cut and collect is really important from a conservation perspective. Bracken bruising, that, it sort of, dampens down the growth of the bracken for the next year. But prescribed burning can be a tool at the right time of year and under the right supervision from the fire service, but also an ecologist, so that we're doing the right thing. A controlled burn just rattles over the vegetation. It doesn't go into the soil, so it doesn't destroy your seed source. It doesn't destroy the sort of quality of the soil. So it can be used. An uncontrollable wildfire burns deep into the ground. So, it can be used positively, with, an education base behind it.
We really need to learn to live with fire. That's the crux of all of this.
Yeah, we are currently working with University of Swansea. So they're doing, I think one is doing a master's on the issue with fire with soil, and another is doing a master's thesis on the issue of vegetation. So we have looked at wildfires and prescribed burns to see the different effects, and it's part of what we're trying to build into our internal management plans now. Whereas if we work with a farmer and every year we go to the same farm because the fields are on fire, whether it be by the local community or whoever does it, we look at those areas. If that field needs managing, should we just let that fire burn? Like Craig said, if it's in March and there's a fire on that field, why would we put that fire out? So part of my job is to work with that farmer and say, right, what areas do you want managed? So when we attend those areas, we can let the fire burn and manage the areas for them. under control. So that's part and parcel of it, really, and other landowners, and that's what we're hoping to build up, like I say, internal management plans to educate our crews and to give our tactical managers as much knowledge to be able to put that plan in place when they get there.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Right, just got a quick question. How sustainable and environmentally friendly is the equipment the service uses to tackle wildfires?
Well, as you can see, the Polaris is a petrol vehicle. It's 15 plates, so 7 years old. So again, we have a lot of use out of equipment. We don't just buy stuff and then sort of move it on. We do use our equipment. Again, there's a trade-off here, isn't there, between the carbon lost through wildfires compared to what we're doing. One of the things we have just done, we've recycled, so our old firefighting hose, now we're recycling it. We're actually drilling holes in it. Rather than buying, it's like a sprinkler hose, and rather than buying sprinkler hose, which is not only very expensive, but it's something that's being made as well. We're now using our old hose, which, because of the way hose is rolled in a fire engine, it's always stowed in the same way, it percolates on the edges. So now we're drilling that hose and making holy hose. So these large-scale fires on the uplands, or the brash fires, or fires that are spreading across people's property, we can put this sprinkler hose in place. So we are thinking about the environment. But again, that's where managing these fires will be a bigger part. Because nobody at the moment is measuring, we talk about carbon, nobody's measuring the amount of carbon we're losing through wildfires.
I'd also say, one of the things we're really looking at is how do we manage large areas of landscape sustainably. Now, ideally, we want to have grazing on that. That will keep the vegetation down. We're looking at sort of grazing. Mixed grazing is fine, but really we want horses and cattle in particular, because they break up the vegetation so that even anything that's left there at the end of it, it's broken down, so it hasn't got that sort of volume. But that would be the long-term thing. But what we have to do is prep the land, because it's gone so far over that it's really difficult. You can't even wade through the bracken. So the bracken bruiser is on there at the moment, so that will suppress the bracken, so that will allow the grass to come through and sort of the herbs to come through as well, which makes it sort of ecologically really interesting and important. But that then reduces the fuel load as well. So if we then had sustainable grazing schemes throughout, which is not heavy, it's not huge numbers of cattle or horses on there, but it's sort of small, light grazing, which sort of maintains that ecological value, but also suppresses that fuel. So that would be the goal and long term. And that's where things like SFS, farming scheme, will really come in handy to sort of link up these really important networks from an ecological perspective, but also in really key fire risk areas.
I think we're at a really important time now, the transition. We talk about sheep farming and the viability, the financial viability of sheep farming, and then we talk about rewilding, and there's all these different groups, and these groups are all polarised. And what we need to do, they're all in silos, and they all got really strong opinions, and we need to get together and we need to discuss these problems together so we can find a way forward. Because what do we want? Do we want our landscape at the moment? A lot of it is managed. The uplands, there are sheep on there. There's maybe not as many as we need for a wildfire issue, but they are being grazed. They're not mini forests, and that's what they'll become. The landscape we live in will look totally, if we take sheep off the hillsides 20 years time, it will look a lot different. You only got to look what's happening. In the Mediterranean countries, an exodus of people, rural exodus of people to the coast, to the cities. We haven't had that in Wales, but what we are having is a rural exodus of cattle, sheep, farming. And that's really important, that the landscape will change. And with that, with climate change. So there's a perfect storm coming, and it's really important that we understand that and we work forward. And again, a lot of people talking about planting trees. It's really good, really, we support that. But it's about the right tree in the right place, but also plant and protect, not plant and forget. You plant a tree, if there's a bracken slope but it's burnt every year for 20 years, and then you plant 1,000 trees on it, it's going to burn and you're going to lose 1,000 trees. So put in management, put in fire breaks, protect the trees, and they will grow then, and then they will reduce the problem in the future. But these take time, it takes husbandry, management, and that is really important, because these short-term solutions, I've seen them all. In the 15 years of doing this, it's bang, 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 you can do that. And this is a really complex, it's called a wicked problem, wildfire. It's wicked. It's no easy solution. And you fix one thing, as you think, stop every lighting fires. Brilliant. That would really work until we get a fire. So again, it's really important that this is always cyclical, and it's really important.
Yeah, and on that sort of point of, like, you know, going over to woodland, if we didn't have perpetual fires at all time, woodland would come up. If it was grazed, you know, appropriately, then you would get woodland coming up, and that would be fantastic. But because we perpetually burn it, trees, I think it's over, like, once they're over 8 years, they can kind of get away, they'll survive it. But up to then, we really need to manage really proactively. You know, the Healthy Hillsides, the Bracken Hillsides are really, really important. And you have this, they are transition habitats. They will go over to woodland with appropriate care, you know, and they are important sort of connectivity routes. But if we don't manage them, then they just become problems. And then the more fire, less woodland, you know. So, like you say, it's cyclical, isn't it?
Brilliant. Well, we are drawing to a close of this session now, so thank you so much to our panel of guests that have joined us today, Chris Deacon, Craig Hope, Becky Davies and John Abel. Thank you so much for joining in. If you've missed any part of it, you can find the recording of this on the social media pages at any of the fire services, and it will be shared in the next couple of days. Otherwise, if you have any further questions, you can contact us at Healthy Hillsides, or you can contact your local fire services or your local police, and they will get in touch. So diolch yn fawr am ddod. Thank you for joining.